Welcome to Rings and Things, where we discuss Tolkien adaptations and texts.
We're just two hobbits from the Shire, one bringing the other along on this adventure.
I'm your host, Agnes, and this is my co-host,
Recurring guest star,
JD. Today, we're covering an episode of a show called Kiff. The episode is titled Lore of the Ringlight. It can be found on Disney+. Now, I have no clue what the show Kiff is. It's not an animation style I like very much, and I have not seen anything else from this show besides this one episode.
Yeah, I have never heard of this show either. Although I do like the animation style. It is kind of up my alley. I like that, the modern, it's like a very popular style caught on, like, I don't know, in the last 10 years.
And I think that's part of why I don't like it much. I'm an old person, I guess, in this regard. It's not the animation style that, we had back in my day.
Yeah, I feel like it really caught on, like, probably around Adventure Time was the first real big one.
It made me think of Adventure Time, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of shows like it now, but it's a common gripe. But I see a lot for modern cartoons. They all have the same kind of look, which I do miss them having massively different looks. But I don't particularly take it out on this one.
This show applies Lord of the Rings to modern technology. It casts the One Ring as the Ringlight. Mm-hmm. And I just want to remind you and our audience that application is not allegory. Remember, we talked about this in a Lore and Letters segment. Lord of the Rings is not an allegory for anything. There are applicable themes in it to many things.
So would you say this Kiff episode would be an application, or is this closer to allegory?
I think the difference between application and allegory is how strongly you say that this is in the text versus what you get out of the text and what you impose on other readers. Mm-hmm. So if you were to take this Kiff episode and say this is the interpretation for Lord of the Rings, you'd be turning it into an allegory. Okay. If you take this Kiff episode as this is one of many interpretations of Lord of the Rings with literary value, then this becomes an application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think parody might be the best term for it. This is a parody of Lord of the Rings in a way.
There were elements that had a parody feel to it. It was also, I think, just interpreting Lord of the Rings given a certain message, a certain viewpoint. Mm-hmm. It's an artistic way to interpret a work.
Right.
Now, this particular application could not have been something intended by the author. Tolkien didn't live to see the internet or social media or any of these developments. I'm sure he would be adequately horrified by all of them.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy guess. Not the hot take.
I'm sure he would have had a healthy skepticism of this so-called progress that's been made. These themes, the ones against progress in sheep's clothing, industrialization, and the machine, these are vague, general themes that certainly were intended by Tolkien. Mm-hmm. But these are applicable to specific issues in our lives. Applying Lord of the Rings to the current situation surrounding a concept that I will call the Unholy Trinity, made up of the algorithm, social media, and artificial intelligence, is a favorite application of mine personally. I think about this application all the time. This is an issue that is concerning to me, that has concerned me for over a decade now. Applying The Lord of the Rings to an issue like this is a way that I find I'm able to express my thoughts and better understand others' thoughts. Mm. One of the things that separates my application from an allegory is that there are not supposed to be clear equal signs. In one sense, the Unholy Trinity may be represented by the ring, and in another, it may be represented by a palantir. Mm. And so I just want to say that this is going to be a very personal episode to me because it's about a topic that is very important to me.
Okay.
But before we get into my personal thoughts on interpreting Lord of the Rings in this particular way, let's take a look at the episode of this show. Mm. And then afterwards, I'll share my hot takes. It's kind of like this whole episode's going to be a bunch of my hot takes.
Yeah, the content we're discussing is not going to take up the body of this episode, that's for sure. It is going to be pretty brief, I would imagine.
It was a 20-minute show.
Yeah.
But it started with a proper prologue.
Yes, yeah. I like that. You just throw a prologue in and I'm in it.
Even this knew that all good Tolkien adaptations need a prologue. Mm-hmm. Loved it. Now, this episode has many, many references to the Lord of the Rings films. I'm not going to enumerate precisely what they are.
Yeah, it's feels like almost every other minute or so. Like that's why I'm like this is very much, that's what one of the aspects that made me think parody. Like they were taking famous lines from the films and then applying them in humorous ways.
Yeah, and then they were also saying constructive things as well, which is what makes it more than parody, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for the humor. Some of these do come off to me as low quality, but I still found most of them amusing. Even when I found it low quality, I usually did find something humorous at least.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't deep.
Yeah, there was a few that missed for me, but all in all, I thought it was pretty lighthearted and fun.
And I found a lot of them to actually be deep and thoughtful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the early on, before the actual action starts in the framing device, but after the prologue, the main character Kiff's reading about the play, Lord of the Rings. But they're doing, I don't remember what it was called in universe, but it was Lord of the Rings, basically. And she drops, is this a real, like, she says something along the lines of, is this some ancient language? Or did, like, somebody invent a whole language for this? And I loved that. Like, that, for me, bought me goodwill for this episode, because it's like, okay, this person respects and loves Tolkien.
Yeah. I think that was someone reading the book like before we even got to Kiff, but regardless, that was totally a comment that was made. Was did he invent a whole language for this? That's one of those deeper cut references, and those references are even more interesting to me than a cheap reference to the movies.
Right? Yeah, just copying the line, like referencing the deeper work and like the creation process of the whole world building. Is really good. Yeah,
just deeper insight about the lore all the way around. And I thought that this show had several of those moments. And then in the parody type structure that they're creating here in the weak version of the adaptation that they're making, there are, of course, fundamental differences in the story being told. Like in this one, Gollum finds the ring by chance as opposed to murdering her cousin for it. And in this one, the Ringlight creates Sauron as opposed to Sauron creating the ring. So there's a few things that have, in fact, even been turned on their head to make this story. But that's okay. It's not trying to be a faithful adaptation. It's trying to make a point about, in this case, technology. And we'll dive into its point later on.
There's a character early on in the background. He has a t-shirt that says "Didn't read the book," because I think they're about to do a play based off Lord of the Rings, or a Lord of the Rings-esque work.
Yeah, I think that's about what's happening, like a school play.
When they're setting up, there's a guy who says he didn't read the book, and that is me, because I did not read the books.
And I related to Kiff so much when she had to ask what a ring light was, and then what a selfie was. I knew what a selfie was, but this was actually me.
Yeah.
Because I did not know what a ring light was before this episode.
I will say I did know what a ring light was before going in this episode. But, yeah, it's...
So we both found ourselves.
Yeah. There wasn't much to say. It was kind of just a cut and dry adaptation. A few jokes here and there. The funniest one for me was at one point when they were doing the scene where Gandalf dies, I think it was, in Resurrected, he grabs a passerby. I mean, these are all animals. There's a bug janitor, and he's like... he had a line about being held comfortably, and it was just... off the wall and made me laugh like the hardest out of anything else that happened in this whole episode.
And then there was some things that I didn't get in the show at all. Like, I didn't get what the whole goat wall scene was about.
There was a few things where I'm like, this might be a reference to the greater show, or it might just be like just trying to be completely like off the wall and funny with like obscure nonsensical humor. I didn't know which the goat wall was, but I liked it either way too.
I didn't especially enjoy it because I don't like humors from randomness solely. So I'm hopeful it's just a reference to something in the show that I don't get because I don't know the show. I did appreciate Kiff's Temptation song.
Yeah, that was right after the goat wall, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
The song was catchy. It rhymed really well. And every good Tolkien adaptation needs a song.
Right.
They even picked up on that.
Yeah. Another thing that stuck out to me was from the movies. As from my understanding, this wasn't in the books from our conversation, but they kept a parody about the lembas bread controversy with Sam and Golem.
I noted this as well. Of all the things that they picked up on from the movies that they chose to echo in this one, they had to pick up that.
I think they were kind of poking fun at how really weird it was that whole scene happened too, though.
Which, when I stopped to think about it for more than a minute, I realized that this version of it makes Kiff seem wiser than movie Frodo was about it, because Kiff doesn't send her friend away longer than a moment.
No, I think she directly says this is ridiculous or something like that.
Yeah, immediately pokes a hole in it. So I did appreciate the fact that it was poking fun at it. One of the little things I noticed in the show was that the text on the ring was internet speak.
Yeah.
Like texting abbreviations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just found that super funny, very fitting.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah, that was good.
But unfortunately, in conclusion, when they destroy the Ringlight, I noticed that this does not actually destroy social media.
It's just this one artifact that makes you really good at social media.
Yeah. It doesn't destroy anything else with it. It doesn't take away anything else. Destroying the One Ring in the books takes away a lot of other things. Like even the Elven rings won't work after the One Ring has been destroyed.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was about all we have for talk about the show. It was just a 20 minutes kids show.
Yeah. Straightforward shot of retelling in a way that is funny to children and people who enjoy children's shows, for mostly I'd say the movies for Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, since this was the special that I wanted to do, I wanted to do it because I fundamentally liked this episode. There was much about this episode I liked. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally, I liked the message.
Yeah.
JD, how did you feel about this episode? Did you enjoy it?
I definitely did. I thought it was good. It was a lot of great dialogue. I thought the humor in it was really good for the most part. There was a couple of references that felt too shoehorned in, but it's a kid's show, and I'm a little bit more forgiving if there's not every joke lands with me. The overall message, though, being deeper is what is first of all, probably why we're talking about this. And second of all, I applaud it for going there instead of just being just this kid's show with Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, it wasn't vapid.
Yeah. There was that's just a fun wrapping and precursor for a greater discussion.
Exactly. So that does it for our rings. Let's jump into our things. First, we wanted to talk about the exact same quote.
As Gandalf, the Gandalf stand-in is recreating the flee you fools moment where he's dying. Scamper you sillies is the first one off the bat, honestly. And that was the funniest one for me, too.
The whole quote runs, "Scamper you sillies, gallop you goofballs, hurry you halfwits." Mm-hmm. And I was loving every moment of this, because from the moment he said "scamper you sillies," I was like, oh, that alliterates, just like "fly you fools" does. Yeah. Whoever made this either did this by accident and it's brilliant, or did it on purpose and it's brilliant. It doesn't matter. It's brilliant. And then he moved on to "gallop you goofballs," and I was like, oh, this isn't an accident. Mm-hmm. And then finished up with "hurry you halfwits." I was like, oh, I love this. Yeah. It's amazing writing because it gets at the heart of the alliteration. It's so subtle and it's there. Oh, and then the show had to go and point out that this was alliterative. Yeah. How do you feel about this technique?
So I feel like a lot of what I was mentioning earlier, some of the jokes were a bit on the nose or for kids. They had to send it home a bit, I feel like. And it definitely made it less funny than making it a subtle jab at it. But I don't know. It's kind of the whole time what they were going for was just on the nose. And it made it on the nose, which I don't think necessarily made it better. Kind of ruined the subtlety you're talking about where they really got it. It did make it feel less like something you caught, It made it feel less like a secret. It was more out in the open, which makes it less fun.
Yeah, that's a good description. In case my setting up of the question wasn't on the nose enough, it's not a technique that I particularly enjoyed because it felt like it took the art out of it almost. The self-awareness of the show, I felt, took away from the art in an instance like this.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I didn't love the fact that they referenced it either. Not my favorite. Like that line just before it was one of my favorite things. And then hand-holding through the reference kind of like cheapened it. But again, like, I don't know how necessary that was. I've never seen any of the other episodes of the show. I don't know what the target demographic is, or if it was something that somebody thought was necessary, or if they thought it was just funny. I obviously can't get in the mind of the writer, but I could see them doing it for either reason, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I can too. Regardless, though, it was a brilliant setup that they had with quote-unquote Gandalf falling and making alliterative orders to his companions.
Yeah.
It really cut into the heart of what makes Tolkien sound like Tolkien.
Mm-hmm. Scamper You Sillies is really funny, and every time I watch the scene where Gandalf says "Fly, you fools," I'm going to think of it probably now.
Well, that brings us up to an entire section of hot takes. Before I jump into my hot takes here, I want to make some disclaimers about what I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
This section is entirely my own. The opinions reflected in my voice in the following recording are mine, Agnes Jeffries, alone. They do not necessarily reflect your opinions, JD, or Stephen, our editor. I'm not attempting to represent scholarly research in this section. When I provide an analysis, it is mine, not that of the wider Tolkien community. Therefore, since I am only presenting my opinions here, I want to invite you as the listener, and you, JD, as the recurring guest star, to think critically about my opinions and decide for yourself how you feel.
Got it.
I'm concerned about three things: the algorithm, social media, and artificial intelligence. I'm going to call these three as a concept the Unholy Trinity. I have been concerned about these issues for a really long time. Well, I guess really long is relative. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd say I've been actively concerned about this for over a decade now, slightly over a decade.
Right.
I stopped using Facebook the day it got rid of the most recent option back in 2013, related to these concerns that have grown to what is creating this episode today.
Yeah, that was quite visionary. Not many people knew to be wary of the algorithm then like they do now.
Which is part of why I like to think that some of these thoughts have had some time to stew. Not that they are necessarily 100% in the gold all the time. Not that I won't modify my opinions as we talk about this tonight. But I like to think I've been reflective and thinking critically myself about these issues as well.
I do remember, I've been on the internet, I do remember feeling, without really articulating or doing much about it, but feeling that change where it went from, like you said, most recent for Facebook into something where it was a machine trying to recommend you a feed. This was present on everything. What hit me the most was YouTube. I was early on YouTube, and it definitely feels different now that there's an algorithm recommended videos instead of, technically I guess it was an algorithm before, but a simpler algorithm recommending videos based off keywords and tags. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I do, real quick before we move on from this point, you mentioned the Holy Trinity. Would you say that
Unholy Trinity.
The Unholy Trinity, excuse me. Would you say that any one of these things without the other three would be like toothless or not as dangerous as these three in particular together?
Oh, that's an amazing question. Because that gets at the heart of my
Do you want to save the answer
setup
for near the end?
I think that all of these have positive aspects to their existence, and together they become an unstoppable force in society that concerns me. Each one by itself may be able to convince an individual that the goods outweigh the bads. And I think altogether the bads outweigh the goods.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what like an algorithm would look like without social media, for example, unless we're talking about like shopping sites or something like that. But the other two I could see being independent of each other And I could also see how them coming together with a algorithm could compound and become worse than the individual parts.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about each of the individual parts and specifically what my concerns are for each one.
Okay.
Because even by themselves, I have concerns about each one.
Sure. Yeah. And that's fair.
I don't think any of them are good at all. I think the bad outweighs the good on all of them.
Just on their own merits as an individual thing.
Yeah, but I think that opinion is possibly slightly different than believing that the conglomerate is the problem.
Yeah.
I think those two beliefs are distinct, even though I would tend to think that each one of these is problematic individually.
Okay, I'm developing my opinions as we're talking, but I'm noting stuff down in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I get to talking about each one of these on its own, I want you to forgive a small tangent. Mm-hmm. I want to establish some relevant information for this discussion before we get further talking about these terms. There is an excellent video by a physics teacher, CGP Grey, on machine learning. Mm-hmm. Have you seen this video, JD?
Yeah, I believe so. I've seen most of his videos. Is it, especially if it came out before like the last year? I'm pretty sure I've seen it.
Yeah, it's been out for several years now, and he gave it a brush up with the popularity of ChatGPT recently. We will link the video in the description below. I highly recommend watching it.
I highly recommend watching any of CGP Grey's videos. It's a very easy recommendation.
Yeah, for sure. So, in summary, this video explains how we have taught machines to teach themselves.
Yes. Yeah, this video, we looked it up while we were watching it. It came out in 2018, just before, well, not just before, but when they were, the topic was the YouTube algorithm mostly, but also social media algorithms. But algorithms and artificial intelligence are very, very similar.
They both work with this concept called machine learning.
Right, exactly. And they do it the same way, I'm pretty sure.
I've heard that the way CGP Grey describes the machine learning is the same description for algorithms or for ChatGPT. I'm sure there are subtle differences in precisely how it's executed.
Right, yeah. If you're really into tech, you might be grinding your teeth a bit even. But they're similar on a high-level concept, at least.
And for those of the audience who are into tech, I fully admit I am not a tech expert.
No, I'm far from it too.
But this is still my understanding of it. Correct my understanding of it if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And this is the best way I know to express what my concerns are. I need to use literature to help me explain how I feel about the world, what the world makes me experience.
So, in related to this conversation, the video we just watched by CGP Grey, this is mostly is the takeaway that you mostly wanted to discuss from it rather than the process of how it worked, but that nobody can explain exactly what they're doing to make the decisions? That
is a big thing that I want people to take away from this, is that not only you and me who are not techs, but the people who are techie don't know precisely how this works. The people who create these things don't know how the tools they're making work. Mm-hmm. And now we have this driving every aspect of our world. Machines we don't understand show us our social media feeds, suggest our videos, and advertise our purchases. They set prices for things. They infest everything. And when I speak about the algorithm, what I mean by that is the use of the greater body of collected data that exists on you just by your existence. Specifically, I mean things that are personalized for you.
Yeah.
I think that's where the most of my concern lies. The fact that we have tools that are working without our understanding, even on background things like setting prices for stuff, is concerning enough.
Right.
But mostly I'm going to be focusing my concern on ways in which a personal individual interacts with the algorithm.
Usually through social media.
Social media, or like I said, purchasing things is a lot of information.
Yeah. Advertising still is a person interacting with the algorithm, I'd say, too. Being advertised to, and especially if you interact with the ads.
The algorithm that chooses the ads you see is a prime example of a non-social media way the algorithm touches you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually going to be one of the things I'll return to talking about in a little bit is the power of advertising.
Got it. So we have our basic understanding of machine learning kind of cited, and that's the assumption we're going to be working on for the rest of this conversation.
Yep.
Got it.
And one of the things that concerns me about the algorithm is that the algorithm knows us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah, that is really philosophically troubling. And it makes sense too. How many times do you just Google something that you forget about in 5 minutes that you even looked it up, and that's stored about you forever?
And I want to talk about that a little bit more. I have something addressing that particular phenomenon coming up, and I have an example that happened to me the other day that I'm going to talk about as well. I could easily
see why the algorithm would know. Well, I'm me personally, because I don't remember my day-to-day activities, minute-to-minute activities. Just kind of all goes into a blur after I get the useful information. And that's, for example, Googling, let alone like everything else you do online.
And not interacting with the algorithm is information that the algorithm can use.
Yeah. Yeah, anything is data, even in absence.
Sometimes especially in absence.
Right. If that makes you like stand out, if everyone else is on Twitter and you've never made one, that's going to stand out to a lot, a lot of different, not just people, but the AI algorithm, machine learning, data conglomerates.
Yeah, exactly. Now, throughout this discussion, I'm going to be peppering in references to The Lord of the Rings to try to help me explain the parallels I see between the wisdom that we get in The Lord of the Rings and the situation I see unfolding in the world around me.
Right.
When Gandalf is talking about Saruman using the Palantir, Gandalf warns us that perilous to us are the devices of an art deeper than we possess ourselves. And this is an example of my concerns about the real world being echoed in the philosophies of the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
None understands the arts that have built these machines.
Yeah.
And so I feel that they are perilous to society if no one understands it, let alone, the person using it. It's perilous enough that Saruman didn't understand how the Palantir worked, but its creator did. How much more perilous are these algorithms that are controlling everything when no one understands them?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is very interesting that there, again, like the whole process of nobody from the creator to the machine itself to the user knows how it works, where even like you said with the Palantir, definitely the creator knows how and why it works the way it does.
Yeah, at least someone does. And it was still perilous to Saruman because he didn't personally know how it worked.
Right, yeah.
And so here's where I get to the predictive qualities of the algorithm. Have you ever seen an ad for something right after you told someone you might need to get it? Or have you ever had a video suggested on a particular topic you thought about, even though you never said a thing about it? I do not want people to think that I'm saying that these are examples of Amazon listening in or of YouTube reading your thoughts. I am not proposing conspiracy theories like that.
No, yeah, and a lot of people think that it's some sort of, like, they are listening, but, well, go on.
I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon did collect information on you through their echoes, but that's not what I'm saying.
I don't even think they need to, is the point that you're trying to make, is even if they didn't, this would all still be possible, right? Even if they didn't actually listen to your words with the audio sensors on their devices.
Yeah, I don't trust Amazon is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm not accusing them of anything.
Right, yeah.
I don't think they need to. Like you said, the phenomenon that I see happen in the world is sufficiently explained by other means.
Right, through the means that they're telling us they're using without going into conspiracy.
Yeah, so I don't see a reason to need to go into conspiracy here.
Although it is fun to talk about, but yeah, there's like, it feels like a little bit too easy an explanation is that they're lying. I feel like it's just very creative uses of the information you agree to give them just by using their services. It's not beyond that.
And what they can scarily accurately guess. Because a lot of this is really good guessing.
Yeah, well, before you go into any examples, I had this explained and I wish I could remember the source. I listen to a lot of podcasts and I try to mention where I heard something if I think to. This one specifically I don't, but they explained exactly that phenomenon where you and somebody actually have a spoken conversation about something and everyone assumes their cell phones heard it. They picked up on it, right? But if you're having a conversation, say about, I don't know, gardens, and then one of your friends Google's garden supply, they had all of your phone's location data and knew you were all around, and they knew your friend Googled garden supplies. So now they know everybody who's there, there was a chance that they were talking about gardening and recommend gardening to all of them.
Exactly. It's information like that can explain some of these surreal things.
Yeah. So that phenomenon I hear people talk about all the time. It's like, and I hear it all the time, like from my coworkers, friends, like we were just talking about this and then this showed up on my ad feed.
Yeah. And this happened to me the other day that I was thinking about the way I've used YouTube over the years. And I was thinking about a particular subscription that was one of my oldest original subscriptions on YouTube. And I watched the channel for years and years and years. And eventually I stopped watching and I eventually unsubscribed. And I was thinking about it the other day and I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if maybe I went back and started watching their stuff again? Would this improve my life? I was like trying to reflect on this decision. And then 2 days later, I see a video recommended in my YouTube suggestion videos from this old creator. I never see videos from them in my suggestions.
Yeah, and that's really weird because you like, who knows what data inputs you had that somehow led them to that.
I never searched for the channel. I never said anything about this to anyone. It was entirely internally in my head. This is an example of the algorithm knowing me, not better than I know myself, because I had the thought first. No, it didn't know me better.
Right.
It knew me equally as well as I knew myself.
Yeah. And so, like, guessing at it is fun for me personally, but it's like maybe there's like some sort of, it keeps track of how long you were subscribed, how long you weren't subscribed, and had just from thousands of data sources of something similar, knows exactly when the nostalgia will be right and recommend it again.
I know exactly why it suggested it to me. Because it knows the things I am concerned about. It knows the greater narrative of my life.
Right.
As well as I do. I like to think, because I like to think I'm a pretty self-aware person, and I like to think that the algorithm doesn't have me beat. But you know what? It probably does, because I'm actually not special. Yeah,
I accept that it has me beat. And I feel like I'm pretty self-aware compared to the average goat. Like, I'm in the top of the bell curve, but maybe just the top 60%. I feel like there's still a lot more people who are better than I am. But yeah, I feel like, well, it's kind of like the truism from Socrates. I know enough to know that I know nothing. I know enough about algorithms to know that I know nothing about. They know more than me.
Yeah.
About myself than me. Like, I've seen it. I've seen the evidence. I've seen countless examples from other people. I've seen it happen to me. And it's like one of these things. It'd make like a good horror trope. Like this constant thing that's watching you and like picking up pieces of you that you're accidentally leaving behind and creating an image of you that is accurate and can predict what you're doing next. And is just like, it's just trying to sell you like cheap Temu products or something like that.
Exactly.
It's weird that it comes to that end, but it's like, if you think about the whole process about how that ad got there, the sausage is made, it's almost like cosmic horror. Like it's like some sort of cryptid or supernatural beast.
Exactly. I think the algorithm can exert an almost irresistible influence on people, and the more a person uses the algorithm, the more the algorithm can predict you.
I think there is something to say about, like, when you don't use it, it still is a data point for it.
Certainly.
And I feel like you could spam it with bad data points by just...
It will know what's a bad data point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I feel like you could overuse it to the point where it's a little bit more secure with you than you think. But I don't know. Like, again, maybe that's just hubris.
How smart is this algorithm?
Right, exactly. It is. It's.
I don't think you can be too cautious.
Yeah.
Whatever you think is fooling the algorithm, assume it isn't.
No, I know. Yeah. And also, I'm putting this out for anybody to listen to, so it's like it's on a microphone. I'm sure it's
the algorithm knows what I think about it.
Yeah.
I don't think that is hidden.
I wonder how much it knows I fear it. That's
it knows.
Interesting.
It knows you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
Because it knows me better than I know myself. It knows everyone better than you know yourself.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
And as much as you think you're special, you're not. As much as I think I'm special, I'm not.
I kind of don't want to fear it just so it respects me. That usually works out, right?
Play dead. But the algorithm can be found in almost every facet of life these days. It's basically impossible to not be touched by it in some way. Yeah,
that's a good point. And you know, this started the data collection on your purchases. It started long before the age of the internet too. It's gotten to a next level. Like that's what the savings cards are for, that are popular and regionally for us, Kroger and Speedway, but they're all over the country. That was the start of data collection for shopping.
And the concerns I'm talking about in this episode are not against all data collection or against all personalization on things. It's against the massive quantities we have of this done by things no one understands.
Yeah, and
if you want to use bubble sort and some other sort of named algorithm, okay, so the word algorithm isn't a bad word.
You're right.
Algorithm just means a method by which you do something.
Right. This is like the algorithm with a capital T and A.
Yeah. Capital T, capital A, the algorithm is different than an algorithm.
Right. And
in the 80s, when they were doing data collection, I don't think they were using machine learning the way that we have now.
No, but I will say it's the start, and I think we should be a little bit like I don't think it's the same level, but I do think this is a precursor. That's what normalized it. Like I feel like if you ask somebody 20 years before that, like, do you want the grocery store to know everything you bought? They would scoff and think that's ridiculous, and even if they could save a penny on a dollar, they wouldn't do it, you know?
Yeah, my mom resisted getting the cards at the grocery store for years because she didn't want them tracking her purchases. Yeah. And everyone told her she was nuts because she could save money doing this. And honestly, she was right. Yeah,
and even with the grocery stores, like, it's exactly the same thing, just in a microcosm, right? It's like, do you want them to advertise, like, for example, like junk food that they know that you buy sometimes and don't want to, and stuff like that? Like, yeah, I think it's expanded out from there. I'm not saying this is the first data collection either. I'm not sure what is. That'd be a fun thing to dive into. It's an early example though.
But I think the differences between these two examples are far enough apart to set the 80s data collection separate from what I'm talking about. Data collection that you consent to, done with algorithms that someone understands, is sufficiently different that while we can discuss it as the gateway drug to this and have separate concerns about it, I think that's a slightly different issue than what is going on here.
Well, the reason I kind of pointed out as question, yes, it is completely different. I just feel like this whole Unholy Trinity falls apart with the data collection. Like, that is the easiest way to defeat this.
That is a great point. That's what I've been looking for in this. Thank you for that. I've been looking for what the one ring we need to destroy is.
Yeah, data collection for me, I don't think any of it works without it.
You are 100% correct. Let it be known that data collection is the one ring.
Yeah, but who are we going to trust to throw all of Google's vaults of information into a volcano?
A hobbit.
Not me. Please keep me away from everybody's data. I will use it for evil on the path to good.
So, I want to dive into talking about each one of these aspects. Well, I guess we kind of have been talking about the algorithm already. That's been the first aspect.
Yeah, the algorithm is for me, of the three, the one that I know the most about, I would say. So I have the most to say about it.
Yeah. Well, social media is a main source of the destructive nature of the algorithm.
Right. I have social media, but I do not understand it at all.
Which by what I'm proposing here, I think I would like to persuade you is a problem by the end of our conversation.
Okay.
People spend a lot of time on social media and a lot of time interacting with the algorithm through it.
Mm-hmm.
Dangers of the fear of missing out or of body image aside, social media shows us what it wants to show us. A benevolent algorithm may show us what it thinks we want to be shown, and a more insidious algorithm will show us what we fear to be shown.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of an algorithm is your attention. Attention is currency, and we only have so much of it.
Definitely, yeah.
And we are being manipulated by machines that know us better than we know ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It will get to you. It doesn't matter how great you think you are at managing your social media and limiting your time and all of this stuff. It will get to you because it doesn't matter how much you think you're fooling the algorithm. You're not.
Right. Understand that.
So not all social medias use the algorithm to the same extent.
Right.
Even those which use algorithms less, I think, still skew our view of the real world. I think there's a certain problem with social media that is linked up directly with the algorithm. And then there's also a problem with social media as social media, even the ones that don't particularly use the algorithm to generate their, to make you interact with it.
Right. Well, and so there are different types of social media. For example, there are ones that are very like, you're supposed to be friends with your family and follow your family members and share pictures for your family to see. And then there are some that these are to meet new people with similar interest on the internet. For example, the first one would be like Facebook and Twitter, or the second would be like Reddit and Tumblr, and Instagram's somewhere in the middle. But I feel like all of these are still designed to get your attention in different ways, but there is just a different flavor to them.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think that even ones that don't have a lot of algorithmic influence on them, I think they still distract you from your real life and stop you from making real connections with people. When you are making posts on a social media platform, I think sometimes it's self-aware and sometimes it's not, but I think there's a lot of self-deception around the idea that you are sharing yourself personally. You are sharing your profile. Like when you like someone else's post, you're not interacting with another person. You're interacting with that person's profile.
Right.
And there's this corporate algorithmic buffer between you. It creates the dopamine sensation of connection without actually giving you real connection. It's not that you can't find that one friend online through a social media network, and it can be a real friendship. I'm not trying to say that all connections on the internet are fake or anything like that. But in broad sweeping strokes, I think a lot of people spend a lot of time wasted on the internet compared to developing real friendships on the internet.
Well, I'll say this too, to kind of, the algorithm really took over the internet in the early 2010s, as you mentioned. Like, that's when it started and then took off in maybe the mid. And it was much easier to meet friends to talk to about your interests before that. Like, the algorithm makes it harder to make those genuine connections. I'm saying from personal experience, at least in my life. I've met way more friends before 2015 online that I felt like were just people who I like to talk to and had similar interests. Everybody I meet through online now, it doesn't feel the same, and I can't put my finger even on what it would be, really.
And the places I've made internet friends after those dates that you mentioned were made through very low algorithmic touched places, like social media that doesn't use an algorithm, or paying to not use the algorithm, or things like that. Yeah,
the best way I could describe it, interacting with other people, even at like strangers on a larger, heavier use algorithm site, like the comments on Facebook of a public group or a TikTok video, it feels like almost like bathroom wall graffiti. And you're not you're just going to comment and like what you like, and you're never going to see any of those people again.
Yeah.
And that back in the early forum days, you would see the same people over and over. You'd get to know what they were like. You would.
I was in a group like that. Yeah.
Yeah. You would, and like sometimes you would message them in other sites and keep in contact with them for a long time. You know, it felt like much more conducive to humans making connections with other humans before. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if algorithms kind of prevented that by making sure you don't see the same people. I have no proof of this. This is just pure theorizing. But they might not want that and make it so you don't see the same people over and over in groups now.
I have a theory as well. My theory is that it's not the same for every person. It's whatever the algorithm thinks will keep you on the screen longer.
I don't know if it's that fine-tuned to per person, but I mean, maybe why not?
I think it is. And this foreshadows one of my big concerns is that we aren't seeing the same world.
Right, yeah.
If I go look at a comment thread on Facebook, I'm not going to see the same comments you see.
Yeah, one fun thing about that is the algorithm on Netflix gives you different title cards based off what it thinks about you. So if you go look at the same show, the title card is completely different based off like the different profile you look at it on.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I remember I saw some funny examples online the other day. Like where they made like a new profile and just the only difference was gender and looked at the same shows and noticed the differences.
Wow, very interesting. The third branch of the Unholy Trinity is artificial intelligence, AI.
Which is deeply, like I said, related to the algorithm.
That's why this is a trinity.
Yeah.
You know, you got three persons and they're one god. This is three problems and they're one problem.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Well, that was where I was coming from with calling it the Unholy Trinity, was because I see how deeply connected they are, but yet they are very different things.
Right.
And they all need to be talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll make some offshoot where I call the algorithm and AI the same one, and I'll be a heretic, like Arianism or something like that. But social media is definitely different, for sure.
Yeah. Social media is the incarnate form.
This is going in with, like, maybe we just, like, do whatever the algorithm wants and eventually start worshiping it.
I'm afraid, JD.
I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't joke about something I feel like you have a lot of actual, genuine fear for. But it's how I deal with such large horrors, is humor.
Absolutely. I'm fine joking about it. I'm just saying that it's not off the table. So I think that AI is the logical development of machine learning.
Yeah.
If you machine learn enough, you're going to develop an AI like ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
AI comes with a host of ethical questions, I think, and a multitude of concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Already, AI and the fear of AI is everywhere.
Right.
Sam wasn't even born yet. She's not 2.
Mm-hmm.
Sam wasn't born. AI was starting. It's everywhere now.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how pervasive this has become so quickly.
Yeah, no, every app is in integrating an AI into it. And again, like, where you draw the line between AI and algorithm, that's not very new.
Yeah. And this is why we're talking about machine learning in the beginning as well, because machine learning underlies both of these.
Yeah, I maybe a techie can explain, or I could find an article about this, but I'm not quite sure where the line even is, because an AI that doesn't use words to talk and uses song suggestions is also an algorithm.
Yeah.
But it's still an AI if it's just as smart, I feel like, if it's just like using the same underlying processes. I'm not sure. Is the only difference for AI, you think, the language model, like using English to communicate instead of songs or ads or videos?
I'd be open to a discussion regarding
where the line is there.
Where the line
I'm not
is.
Sure at all. That's the only reason I'm asking.
I'm just bringing AI into this because it feels different to me.
Yeah, so what is being labeled as AI, not like broader picture, capital A, capital I.
I'm talking about ChatGPT and all of its derivatives. I'm talking about AI-generated art and all its derivatives, regardless of whether you're using DALL-E or some other brand name. I'm talking about the phenomenon of seeing an AI-generated result on Google on the top. I'm talking about the insecurity that I feel on the internet whenever I message any stranger on the internet. Am I talking to an AI or am I talking to a human? I didn't used to have to fear this.
Yeah, that's true. I
had a very surreal experience on the internet where I was messaging with someone and then he sent a message and I was like, this sounds like AI.
Right.
I don't understand. Like, am I talking to a real person? This really troubles me.
About the same period with the algorithm starting to take hold 2013 through 2015, there was a spam bots that used artificial language, but they were much more canned in responses and easier to detect. But like, again, like this is sort of the same, like the language models have gotten better, but it was the same idea. It was just so much easier to detect back then. You just had to give like a response it didn't know how to respond to, and it would say something that made absolutely no sense.
Right.
Whereas now these AI are good at making a response that at least sounds like something somebody would say, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot more subtle. And like I said, I'm putting AI as a separate topic because it feels different to me. Mm-hmm. And these are all new manifestations of it. But you're completely right that this is deeply connected with machine learning, and there is a gradient here. I just see AI as a new color.
So
like, where do you draw the line between blue and green?
Right, yeah. So I'm specifically saying there were like language models before ChatGPT and the ones that got really big in the last few years. They just weren't that good. And there were bots trying to get people's personal credit card information that would respond with certain sentences with other ones. It's just they couldn't make new sentences, right?
Yeah.
So there were proto AI for quite a while, and there was oh god, what was the one? There was this one that a bunch of YouTubers that were like gamers tried to convince was an AI maybe 10 years ago. Cleverbot.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, a very older example, but it's. I think that one just copied user responses that it's seen and then put them out randomly and see what the other people would say. And that's very like rudimentary machine learning. Like it's been a long time in development, but
I mean, that sounds like an algorithm we understand.
Yeah, that is an algorithm we understand exactly. And now it's kind of that taking to the next level.
Algorithms we don't understand combined with the power of speech seem to me much more deceptive than they've ever been before.
Yeah, definitely.
So with all of these new AI troubles, this continues to make me feel like we're living in a dystopia.
Yeah.
But we accept it because we attend to it. This algorithm, this unholy trinity, demands our attention. We can't see the dystopia that we're living in because we're too enslaved to this unholy trinity that has cropped up around us over the last 10 years.
This might be a good spot to put it in. I wanted to ask you about and if you have a better bullet for this discussion, but where do you think, like, are you familiar with the hallucinations that these chatbots have?
I'm aware about incorrect information that they give.
Yeah, so they call them hallucinations, where the bot wants to give an answer that makes linguistic or conversational sense so much that it'll make up false information and fill it in. And I really thought that was interesting. I think it's weird they're calling it hallucinations, but those types of errors are really interesting because these are mostly models for language, not facts, but people will still go and ask them questions about fact and then get completely incorrect factual information.
It's even being pushed down our throats by being the top result on Google.
Right. Ugh. Never read it.
It's so hard to Google anything because you got the AI on top. But honestly, I would like people to stop and question Googling things as well, because what we see on Google is influenced by an algorithm.
Yeah, Google's algorithm has been, I don't know exactly what happened, but a lot less helpful in the last 5 years for finding information, I've noticed, and I've seen other people noticing too. They make it a lot, like you don't get a variety of sources like you used to.
Well, it was like my point that I said a little bit ago, that a benevolent algorithm may show us what it thinks we want to be shown, but a more insidious algorithm will show us what we fear to be shown.
Yeah.
And I want to focus in on this as well, that I think this affects your AI question about hallucinations as well, that precisely what it hallucinates, I think is deeply connected to either one of those things. And it's going to depend on the individual, which one are you? Are you one who sees what you want to see, or are you one who sees what you fear to see? I don't think either one is good.
Agreed.
But when you Google something, I don't think you're getting good sources even when you scroll past the AI. I was thinking the other day, how in the world do I research something without an algorithm?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'll go to the library. And then I realized, wait, the librarian's just going to type into Google to answer my question.
Yeah, it's a big problem. And the thing is, again, like the algorithm can change. Like before, I don't know if somebody understood what was going on, so I don't know if that was where the problem was. But it felt more benevolent, and now Google definitely feels like it's not even really trying to help you find information that you're trying really hard to find.
Whether it's because we don't understand it and the algorithm has taken over and is no longer benevolent, or whether there's an insidious person behind it, or whether the algorithm whether the unholy trinity has gained consciousness and has decided to cast judgment upon us. I don't know. I'm not here to speculate about that.
I'm going to guess for now it's an insidious person behind the algorithm, but
I'm fine with that. But like I said, I'm not.
The scary part is those are all even on the table.
Exactly. The epistemological challenges that this unholy trinity creates are just so monumental.
Yeah.
It scares me that I can't research a topic without algorithmic influence.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I don't just want to be ranting about the problem. I want to also try to propose things to do about it and bring in some more Lord of the Rings for some good hope. I've brought all your spirits down far enough. We need some Lord of the Rings to bring us back. So I propose that one way we can think about our relationship to the unholy trinity is as our relationship to a ring of power. There are uses of these things in our daily life that can be likened to using the elven rings, uncorrupted by Sauron, yet dependent on him. To say no to the one ring may require us to say no to the elven rings, which I like how this links into what you said about data collection, because I wrote that note before you made your data collection comment.
Yeah.
If we say no to the one ring of data collection, we lose all of these unholy trinity bad stuff, but we're also going to lose customized coupons at Kroger.
Right. Yeah, there's some things where it comes through. There's some times where I'm happy that an algorithm knows me better than myself and get advertised exactly what I need to solve a problem before I need to know it. I'm not going to sell like all of humanity's future on that, but I'm going to miss it.
And I think that as a society, I think to make the right decision, I think we need to say no to all of it, even the good stuff.
Right, yeah.
Even the elven rings.
I think as like if we want to talk really societal problems, the way I think some countries are going are making like bills of rights basically for your own personal data and what websites can do with it and how they can collect it. Like I think the EU has a ton of extensive data privacy laws where companies have to really stand by, like if you say do not collect my data and stuff like that. How much they actually are is another question, of course, but I think that is possibly the most hopeful future we have for unlinking these three things.
But I don't think that's destroying data collection.
No, it's hampering it, though.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't solve the problem. Just like anything but destroying the ring doesn't solve the problem facing Middle-earth. Yeah,
that'd be like Frodo just burying at 30 feet somewhere.
Exactly. So I see a lot of people living in fear right now. I see the shadows of people bitterly divided. I think that this is the work of the unholy trinity. And I think that this is at the core of every other issue facing the world right now.
Yeah. Are you speaking like mostly politics and like stuff like that? Not like the capital P politics, but like culture war stuff like that? I'm
talking anything that is something that causes fear and bitter division.
Right.
Which, sure, politics is a big one that I'm thinking of right now. Politics with capital P or little p, I don't care. Culture wars is a great application of this. I see this over and over and over again. This comes down even into the Tolkien fandom itself.
Yeah.
There's bitter division about rings of power.
Yeah.
Like the fact that people are so scared about so many things, the fact that people are so bitterly divided about so many things, and oftentimes isolated in their own worldviews. And I'm counting myself among this because remember I said the algorithm touches everyone. No one is special. This is a fight that everyone has to fight because it hampers everyone. And I think that getting rid of the unholy trinity, if we were to subtract this from our world, we would see a lot less fear and we'd see a lot less division because you'd have to talk to your family at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have that stupid Facebook post dividing you.
Yeah, you don't really see people at Thanksgiving talking like they used to. That's a good, like even the political fights that were a bit silly, like were there at least. People now, they're too scared to talk about it because it's too divisive.
What I think is happening in some cases, obviously it's very complex. Everyone's going to have his own story.
Yeah.
And the algorithm is going to find exactly the pressure points to hit for you. But I think perhaps one of the bigger narratives that's happening is maybe something like you and your family member are making different political posts on Facebook. Maybe you have a fight in the comment section. So, you decide you're not going to go to Thanksgiving this year, which means that you don't get to talk to your family member about your different political views in a healthy environment face to face. I know you're not supposed to talk about politics at Thanksgiving, but does every family ever actually follow that?
Lately, it's been worse for my family. And I think it's just because, again, things have been so divided. Like 10 years ago, there was much more debate.
But you could also just talk to your family about it, and you'd be talking to a person. You wouldn't be commenting back and forth without the human interaction part of this. And the algorithm is showing you only the posts it wants you to see. I
think I figured this out, right? So the algorithm is set to maximize interactions on social media, right?
Which can include negative interactions.
Which includes negative interactions. I think the fact that things are, maybe this is too personal. Maybe this isn't a lot of people seeing it, but like, not too personal, but too personalized. Like in my life, too applicable. It doesn't. But the reason people don't want to talk about politics because it's so divisive now is to make it so you can only talk about politics on social media. Like they set it so.
I love that.
They set the temperature to the point where it's like, this is bad and uncomfortable to talk about in polite company. I would only do it on social media, and then it also becomes a Skinner box where you get likes and your brain feels good, so you keep doing it on social media. And then in real life, it's like
in real life, you have to grow with the conversation that you're having with a real person.
Yeah, there's no coming to a consensus social pressure on the social media where there is in real life. Where if you're trying to talk, by the end of the conversation, when you're talking to someone face to face, you're going to find what you agree on. You're going to try to, at least. Like, that's kind of like the empathetic human soul existing, I feel like, personally.
Have you ever been persuaded by a comment section to believe anything?
Absolutely not.
But have you ever been persuaded by a person in real life about something?
Yeah.
Political conversations would be a lot more effective if they happened in person.
There's a few obscure times on certain niche sites that I comments have kind of stuck with me and changed my view sort of on something or perspective. But again, that's not very common and was much more common like 10 or so years ago. Nowadays, it's a mess. You just go in the comments and look for the funniest way to say what you already wanted to say. Yeah. And then you steal that and put it in a comment somewhere else.
Well, basically all of this is to say that the works of the Unholy Trinity are numerous and problematic. Gandalf says of the situation he finds Denethor in that this is, quote, work of the enemy, such deeds he loves. Friend at war with friend, loyalty divided in confusion of hearts. The sometimes real conflicts that the Unholy Trinity creates distract us and divide us from addressing the core problem. This is its survival mechanism, which ties in with what you were just saying about that this is how the algorithm sets the temperature to make it only acceptable to talk about politics on social media. This is how it's surviving. Yeah. Like one of many ways, of course. It's not just the politics.
Yeah, the algorithm lives in much else than politics. This is like where it gets really scary, I feel like.
Because it's everywhere. And So each of us needs to be extremely careful of what or who we take on as advisors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Unholy Trinity creates subtly different realities for each of us as individuals. Is it any wonder that we struggle to communicate about worlds we don't share? If you don't see the same comments on the Facebook post that I see, we are not sharing the same world.
Yeah, and this gets at, I think, the real horror of all of this is, with everything being affected by algorithm, from the stuff you buy, the stuff you watch, the stuff you talk about, the people you talk to, the words that you see, like, how long being exposed to this until you're shaped by it? You know, does that make sense to you?
And I think it's a lot less than anyone thinks.
And then on top of that, like, where can you draw the line and say, like, you just have to look at all your experiences before 2012 or before you were on the internet to say that was really me?
And what about kids?
Yeah, and I was young once I got, like, that's what I was building to. I was 12 when I started going online. And
I was 16.
Like, I don't think 12-year-old me, even if the internet existed or not, would have a lot of similar opinions to me. But how much of that can I contribute to stuff that I thought of on my own with this constant lurking thing trying to influence me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's there for everybody, unless you are completely off the grid and don't have a phone, read books that you find in the library, and then that you're...
But what ends up at the library is dictated by an algorithm now.
Yeah, that's true. You just have to go into a forest, I guess.
There are some very extreme ways to not have the algorithm touch you, but they're very extreme. I would like to take a look at some of the advisors that we see in Lord of the Rings. Just as we need to be careful about advisors that we take on with this issue.
Right.
I think the Lord of the Rings gives us some examples of traps to watch out for.
Okay.
Galadriel looks in her mirror for advice, and when she shares the mirror with Frodo and Sam, she warns them that her mirror, quote, shows many things, things that were, things that are, and things that have not yet come to pass. Like the Unholy Trinity, the mirror creates many realities for its different users. Mm-hmm. Galadriel warns that wisdom is needed to use the mirror. She judges Frodo has that wisdom. In the end, though, I don't think that Frodo or Sam particularly benefit from their look in the mirror. They notice when they get to seeing the future visions granted by the mirror, they'll think, oh, I saw this in the mirror of Galadriel. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it ever exactly helped them.
Yeah, it didn't benefit them. It was neutral. I don't think it harmed them either.
No, it didn't harm them. So what I take from this is that there's uses of things that can create different realities that may not be 100% strictly harmful.
Right.
But how much use are you getting from them? Is it just so that you can say, oh yeah, I saw that?
Yeah. Yeah, you would have to be like lucky. Like, I think what I'm getting from this is Sam or Frodo and Sam looking in the mirror, they didn't get harmed from it, and they at least to be, from my understanding, we're supposed to be pretty world-wise people. So, like, you have to be pretty wise to escape unscathed, let alone glean benefit.
And in the book, Sam is very tempted to leave Frodo and go back to the Shire because of what he sees.
Yeah.
So, even the Mirror of Galadriel could have done harm to them.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Because it's showing you different realities, future realities, things that are going on that you can't affect. Mm-hmm. Are the things in the news worth your attention if you can't affect them? Just a thought.
Yeah.
Sam can't do anything to help his Shire when he's helping Mr. Frodo.
Mm-hmm.
Another advisor is Grima Wormtongue.
Yes. Yeah. Famously great advisor.
He advises Theoden. This is the voice which would have us believe that the Unholy Trinity is not a problem at all, but is ever our friend and ally. Grima characterizes the times when the Unholy Trinity shows us a vision of the world that is lulling us into complacency.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think this is the one that I am most susceptible to. I'll be honest.
Expound.
Well, just that I'm most apt to want to believe a narrative that everything's okay.
Yeah, it's easy. It is definitely easy. I definitely could fall into this too. I think this is where I am. So I don't know. I have to see the rest, of course, that you've written up here, but I think that it might be okay. I don't really have a good argument for it, but it's just a general feeling that I'm optimistic, generally speaking.
Well, I mean, like the algorithm will use this type of narrative more than anything else to try to persuade me of things.
Yeah. Well,
this is the one that I need to watch out for.
I know that for some reason, people on Facebook found that the algorithm doesn't like when they do angry or sad reacts and do like happy and heart reacts. Mm-hmm. And I feel like positive interaction is regarded as the gold standard of the algorithm. And I think this is part of it. It's like they want everyone to be okay. Like, they don't want controversial opinions if they can help it. I mean, if it's the only way to get people talking, sure. But they would rather people be talking about something like, oh, a vapid niceness.
Yeah.
Vapid, I'm using the word correctly, like fake, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Empty
niceness. Exactly. Yeah.
Another example of someone seeking advice in The Lord of the Rings is Denethor seeks counsel from the Palantir. The Palantiri, quote, do not lie, and not even the Lord of Barad-dûr can make them do so. He can, maybe by his will, choose what things shall be seen by weaker minds, or cause them to mistake the meaning of what they see. This example is akin to the Unholy Trinity showing a true view of the world, but a skewed one. Perhaps you are very good about identifying the truth of what you see online, but does that mean you are seeing truly? Even if you're really good about checking your sources and making sure that you're not getting caught in fake AI hallucinations.
Right.
Does that mean that what you see online is a true view of the world?
You could be presented 100 true facts that illustrate something in the complete opposite of what somebody else would consider is the truth. You could find 100 good sources on any side of an argument, really.
Yeah,
maybe I'm exaggerating 100, right? But you could find good sources on either side of an argument for those sorts of debates. But I think you're talking about more than just like a debate too, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about I guess what I'll characterize as the Florida Man phenomenon. There's crazy people who do crazy things in the world.
Yeah.
And we're a lot more likely to read about them online than we are to see them in person.
Definitely, yeah.
But if you read about enough crazy stuff happening online, you begin to think that that's what the world is. And you forget to see what's in front of you and what you're really interacting with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So by having more and more of our interactions be online through algorithms affected by the Unholy Trinity in some way, I think we're losing a grip on our physical reality in the real world, because we're all seeing these different worlds created by the Unholy Trinity, and we're not seeing the one we actually share in common.
Right. Yeah. This one is kind of like the way to cure it is the proverbial touch grass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Gandalf says to Theoden when he's curing him of Grima Wormtongue. It's basically, go out and touch some grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Theoden was spending too much time on social media interacting with the algorithm.
Yeah.
But getting back to Denethor teaches us another lesson. It is not always good to see that which is true. Gandalf said, quote, in the days of his wisdom, Denethor would not presume to use it to challenge Sauron, knowing the limits of his own strength. But his wisdom failed, and I fear that as the peril of his realm grew, he looked in the stone and was deceived. Far too often, I guess, since Boromir departed. He was too great to be subdued to the will of the dark power. He saw, nonetheless, only those things which that power permitted him to see. The knowledge which he obtained was doubtless often of service to him, yet the vision of the great might of Mordor that was shown to him fed the despair of his heart until it overthrew his mind. Skewed views, controlled by another will, an algorithm even, may show things of service as we perceive peril to our realms, but that does not mean that the information we see is complete. Perhaps we may be better off without any visions of the great might of Mordor, no matter how true they are, without also the visions of Aragorn and the Corsair ships. Sauron would never have shown that to Denethor. Seeing the might of Mordor does not help us oppose it.
I see your point, but I do feel like Denethor was just kind of like, for weak-willed, to say lack of a better word, he was also distraught and emotionally in peril.
Which of us doesn't go through emotional distress and being in peril?
Yeah, and that's when we're susceptible to this sort of attack, I feel like.
And which of us can know to get off the algorithm before the algorithm knows to lure us back in?
Yeah, that is that's when it has the most draw to mindlessly scroll too, is when you're going through an emotionally difficult time.
It's not that Denethor should never have used the Palantir under any circumstances, but the Palantir gave him a very skewed view of the world. It showed him these ships coming up to attack Minas Tirith, but it didn't show him that it was Aragorn in the ships.
Yeah.
It couldn't predict the eucatastrophe.
I feel like this is a bit like Galadriel's mirror, where only the wise should look, and very few are wise.
And Denethor may have the qualifications to use a Palantir under certain circumstances, but he uses it far too much.
Right.
If, under certain circumstances, a person needs to use the algorithm for something, that doesn't mean that you necessarily should become off-grid completely tomorrow to avoid the Unholy Trinity. It's so deeply embedded in all our lives that you're going to interact with it. And Denethor is a cautionary tale about the world that you're seeing through this Palantir that you're using.
Yeah, staring too deeply into it.
And I think there's something to be said for the idea that seeing the might of Mordor does not help us oppose it. Morbidly watching the evils of the world doesn't actually do anything about the world.
Witnessing it isn't taking action.
Yeah. Frodo
and being
also
afraid of it after seeing it also is not taking action too. Feeling nervous about what's happening is often not constructive.
Indeed. And I think the Unholy Trinity feeds a lot of fear loops for people.
Yeah.
Frodo also seeks guidance. He seeks it from Gollum. Sometimes it's necessary to be touched by some aspect of the Unholy Trinity. That was what I was just saying. But just as Frodo does not trust Gollum, yet follows his only lead, so when we must expose ourselves or use an aspect of the Unholy Trinity, we should be aware of its influence and understand it for what it is.
Yeah.
Book Frodo does not fall under any drug spell that Gollum places on him. He doesn't banish Sam. He understands who Gollum is, what motivates Gollum, what Gollum's wanting, and Frodo has to take advice from Gollum to get into Mordor. There's no way around it. He has to. But he never actually falls prey to Gollum. He understands the role that this is playing in his life, doesn't like it, and uses it anyway. It's not ends justifies means, because listening to Gollum is not an inherently evil thing to do.
Right.
But Frodo does have to be careful to not listen to everything Gollum says.
This is more of an example. Frodo isn't doing something evil by listening. It's more like evil undoing itself in the end. Yeah. Gollum's showing Frodo, but yeah, it's not just listening to and falling into on purpose one of the traps laid out for you and being able to overcome it is different than doing something evil. It's not really, it's using evil but not being evil, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Frodo doesn't actually fall into any of Gollum's traps, I don't think. Not Book Frodo.
He has to fight the spider, isn't that one of Gollum's traps?
Was there a different way? Frodo always had to use Shelob's lair.
I'm not sure. Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, I think Frodo always had to go through the tunnel. Gollum thought it was a trap, but it's the way Frodo was going to go.
Right.
Anyway, like, Gollum's trap was not telling Frodo and not being there to help Frodo.
Yeah.
But Frodo was always going to have to get through Shelob's lair.
Got it. That makes sense. I see what you're saying then.
As Frodo has compassion on Gollum, so we must have compassion on everyone, no matter who they are or how bitterly we may disagree. No one is left unaffected by the Holy Trinity. All our thoughts have been influenced and manipulated at some point or other. This isn't just you and me and someone's aunt. This is everyone. Everyone is affected by this. Every political leader, every celebrity, every businessman, even the people who run the Unholy Trinity are victims of it.
This makes it really easy to hope for the best and just hope it's benevolent. Because if everyone's leader and all the businessmen and everyone in tech were subtly influenced to being nicer people, and that might make things a lot better off. Probably not going to work out that way.
I don't think that's what's happening in the world, though.
Doesn't seem to be. Not from my algorithmically generated worldview.
Yes! But, as Mary says, you won't rescue the Shire just by being shocked and sad, my dear Frodo.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think there are things a person can do to meaningfully reclaim some degree of freedom from the Unholy Trinity. First and foremost, be aware of how the Unholy Trinity touches your life, especially in unexpected ways. Awareness is the beginning of action. Focus on what you experience in your real physical life, not what you experience on the internet. Second, limit or eliminate your use of social media, interaction with the algorithm, and AI generation. You'll find you have a lot more time to do the next thing, which is third, do something that influences those in your not digital life to consider these issues.
Got it.
This podcast is exactly that last goal for me. I make this podcast and this episode especially for my friends and family to better understand my concerns about the world. If some internet strangers hear it too, that's an added bonus.
There you go.
But this podcast primarily exists, from my perspective anyway, to be something I can show my friends and family, and this podcast can help them understand who I am and how I think a lot more deeply.
Got it. Yeah, because you can't always spend, because of schedules and other stuff, an hour talking with your family. Yeah. Or friends that you haven't seen in a while.
And I feel like the podcast makes Lord of the Rings into manageable chunks that can be accessible to people to understand a story that is so meaningfully shaping my worldview.
I personally am on this podcast for the most vapid, vain reasons ever, and I hope the algorithm finds it and sends it to everybody in the world.
I wouldn't be opposed to all the internet strangers hearing my hot takes here.
I think they're good. I think it's worth listening to, personally. I might not be the most qualified, unbiased judge of that, but I think these takes are interesting. That's why we make them.
But JD, you are a wonderful recurring guest star, and I thank you deeply for making this podcast with me. And this podcast means a great deal to me, and thank you so much for everything you do to make this project work. It would not be the quality production it is without you.
Thank you.
So personally, I try to limit the contact I have with the Unholy Trinity by the following methods. I do not have social media accounts. I will not even run the social media accounts for this podcast. When I do fall into a social media trap, I'm usually off again in a few months, and it usually happens because I'm feeling the departure of something or someone. Kind of like how Denethor was feeling the departure of his beloved son. We seek out the forms of connection that will give us the immediate dopamine hit, even when they are false senses of connection.
Right, yeah.
Like, when I have a fresh new baby and it's hard to see people outside, I'm more apt to fall into something of a social media trap. Mm. And this ends up switching up how I view a world or things like that. It's, I think people are more likely to seek out the Unholy Trinity when they are emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is exactly the opposite of what we were talking about before, that emotional vulnerability is exactly what you need to avoid.
Yeah, we definitely hit hammer on this very on the head.
Yes.
Just a moment ago. And I, just full disclosure, was not reading ahead, so I feel like that conversation, like, again, you did it again. You led me right down the path.
Another thing I will do is I will watch YouTube videos, but I will only watch those videos that are made by one of my subscriptions or recommended to me by someone in my life. Mm-hmm. I subscribe only to those channels which are recommended to me by someone in my life or by a channel I've already subscribed to.
That's hard. I could never.
This is one of the ways that I can limit the algorithm's input of information to me.
So, how, obviously outside of somebody in your life recommending it, you never try to seek out new creators or anything like that? Or do you occasionally dip into it?
I would have to research the creators.
Mm-hmm. Instead of just having the recommended algorithm do that for you.
I would start with researching the creator before watching any videos. Like if I wanted to take up a new subject and wanted a creator to binge the videos from that particular creator, I would probably first ask my friends for a recommendation on said topic. Mm-hmm. But if no one in my real life had any recommendation for it, I think the next step I would take would be to try to do research into who it might be. But unfortunately, doing research means using the algorithm.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah. No, all the time. I could not resist the allure of a new channel recommended to me.
It's like a muscle. The more you exercise this, the easier it becomes.
I believe it. Yeah.
I never click on a recommended video. It's not that I don't feel temptation anymore. I feel tempted to put on the ring.
Right.
But I do not click on recommended videos. I do listen to playlists I've curated rather than letting the algorithm play what it wants. I will very often turn on a curated playlist. Mm-hmm. In my defense, when a algorithm playlist does get turned on, it knows I want to listen to the same 20 songs over and over again, so I still don't get any new music. The algorithm just knows me that well. Because it knows I don't want algorithm-inspired music.
Yeah.
And perhaps there are more ways that I could limit the algorithm in my life as well. Maybe things I just haven't gotten to yet. But lastly, I try to be aware of those places that I haven't gotten to yet, where I have contact with the Unholy Trinity. This includes, but is not limited to, online shopping and the influence it has on those people who are physically in my life. Because when I get a recommendation for a YouTuber from a real person, I acknowledge that it is highly likely that the algorithm recommended it to that person.
It's almost impossible that it didn't eventually recommend somebody in the chain of the people it took to get to you to be recommended to.
Yes, and I am acutely aware that the creators I get recommended by my friends are people who come secondhand by the algorithm.
Yeah.
But I think that secondhandedness is important.
Your friends are important filters than just whatever the blatant desire is a weird word, but the blatant goals of the algorithm.
Yes. I am choosing to invest in a creator that is important to a friend when I do that. So there is a real world application to what I'm doing, not just an algorithmic suggestion. Mm-hmm. There's only so much I can insulate myself from, and this is the way I choose to invest with the vicarious algorithm influence.
Right.
Now, I would be remiss not to include a point about the good that can come from using the Unholy Trinity. I have downloaded more than one real good person into my life, and for that I am forever grateful. Nothing can happen in Iluvatar's despite. If good could not be drawn from the Unholy Trinity's existence, then it would not exist. This does not mean that it is a good thing, or not perilous, or that we should needlessly expose ourselves to it. Those pure of heart may be able to use the Unholy Trinity to hide from some Sackville Bagginses or escape from Boromir, but that doesn't mean it won't corrupt you.
Yeah, that's a very good application there.
Further, I think power lies where we give it permission to lie. By refusing to use the Unholy Trinity whenever we can take back so much power that we have collectively given away. We're just a bunch of little hobbits, and we can't change the world, but we can change our relationship to the world. I challenge everyone to make some sort of step to lessen the Unholy Trinity's hold of your life. We're all at different points in our lives, so this may look different for everyone. Consider not using your social media for 2 months. Cast off the burden that is social media, the algorithm, and artificial intelligence. Do you feel the freedom?
It is interesting. An interesting challenge. I don't know if I could go all forms of social media for 2 months, but I might experiment with 48 hours for like cold all social media and all algorithms. Mm-hmm.
I think there's benefit to that.
Or I could do a particular social media for 2 months easily too. I just think
The reason I picked 2 months was because that seemed to be the amount of time that the algorithm thought it took people. 2 months was about the amount of time the algorithm thought it took people to form a new habit.
2 months? I heard 21 days, but that was like that might be an old wives' tale.
This is what the algorithm told me. Maybe the algorithm told you 21 days.
Yeah. Maybe it's because it knew if it told me 2 months, I wouldn't do it.
But since this was, this was the reasoning for why I picked 2 months. That it's the amount of time it takes to make a new habit. How long does it take you, dear listener, to make a new habit? That's how long you should fast from social media for. Whatever the algorithm tells you.
Yeah, the algorithm probably knows if you don't.
The algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. JD, if it takes you 21 days to form a new habit, great. The algorithm told me 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks is hard enough for me, too. So I really do feel like we're got some...
Even eliminating one social media, even doing it for 48 hours... I don't mean to undercut these goals. These are important, meaningful goals.
Yeah.
We're all at different points in our interactions with the algorithm, and it can be fear-inducing to try to cut all of it at once.
Yeah, definitely would be tricky for me.
I know when I get rid of a social media, it always feels so good. It is a burden that has been lifted from me.
Yeah.
It is exactly like the burden of a ring.
Yeah.
Now, after me bringing you down for however long we've been recording for, I have a language, lore, and letters for you.
All right.
The elves have 2 words for hope, Amdir and Estelle. I want to talk about these 2 forms of hope. I want to leave you guys on a high note.
Yeah, 2 different forms of hope is a good one.
Amdir is defined as, quote, an expectation of good, which, though uncertain, has some foundation in what is known. This is basically optimism.
Yeah, I feel that one a lot, Amdir.
Estelle, quote, is not defeated by the ways of the world, for it does not come by experience, but from our nature and first being. If we are indeed children of the One, then he will not suffer himself to be deprived of his own, not by any enemy, not even by ourselves.
So this is like metaphysical, like deeply rooted hope. Then, right?
Amdir is hope with a little h. Estelle is hope with a capital H.
Got it. Okay.
Galadriel says it perfectly when she says in The Lord of the Rings, what should be, shall be.
Mm-hmm.
Estelle is the faith, the hope, the confidence that things will work out as they should.
Basically, if things will be okay in the end, and if things aren't okay, it's not the end.
Yeah, exactly. No matter how bad things get, evil can't win in the end. Theoden reminds us that oft evil will shall evil mar. Evil shall forever undo itself and be its own downfall. It's not lost on me that the algorithm suggested that I watch Lore of the Ringlight.
Mm-hmm.
I hope to make this an instance of the algorithm doing itself more harm than good. Perhaps with enough hobbity habits, we can collectively cause the unholy Trinity to end itself. We may not always be able to have optimism or Amdir, but Sam has a moment of Estelle in Mordor.
Mm-hmm.
There, peeping among the cloud rack above a dark tower high up in the mountains, Sam saw a white star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. For a moment, his own fate, and even his master's, ceased to trouble him. Estelle gives us an important peace of mind.
So, for me, if we want to talk about our personal subjective experience on these 2 types of hope, I very often struggled with feeling a big sense of hope, like Estelle in my life. But practicing the smaller hope, Amdir, kind of helped me get there a few times. I wouldn't say I'm there often, but the only times I have, like, I used to be more pessimistic, and I worked on that actively on purpose, and kind of tried to just see the brighter side in most situations. And it eventually, doing that day to day affects your whole worldview. So I will give that little bit of advice when I'm talking about these 2 different kinds of hopes. This is that's what just sprung to mind for me, at least.
That's a really great piece of advice. Thank you for sharing. For me, I get my Estelle from The Lord of the Rings, from the reminder that evil will undo itself.
It's good. That is why we're even talking about all this, right?
It's why I love it so much.
Right. Yeah, and we would not be talking about it if you didn't love it, because I hardly had known about it. I mean, I'd known about it, but hardly is a good descriptor for that.
Well, this is a big reason why I love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and the themes really are powerful for all sorts of reasons, but having hope about the world is one of them, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And despite all of the foreboding themes that I see in Lord of the Rings reflected in the world, I also see Estelle as well. And right. Estelle is how I cope with all of these horrible thoughts that have preyed on my mind for over a decade now.
Right. Yeah.
So, if you decide to use social media, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram through the links in the description.
This outro feels bad this time.
Please follow, like, and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other major podcast platforms. To have your question or comment featured on the podcast, please send an email to shirepost.ringsandthings@gmail.com. The email is the only way you'll get in touch with me directly.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider contributing to our efforts through the Patreon link in the description. Also, a more direct route than social media.
True. A hearty hobbity thank you to our first supporter, Lori J. from Florida. We are deeply grateful for your support.
And a special thank you to our editor and spiritual producer, Stephen Jeffrey. And thank you for listening.